This round 2 is made possible thanks to Surfshark VPN. It's important to be safe out there browsing the web, and sadly, that's not always obvious. I love my family, but sometimes I get a glance at their phones and I'm seeing all this crap they have on it because they're not careful enough, and it's like, God, what am I not seeing on here? The amount of surveillance, limitation, and data mining done on your personal info on a daily basis is upsetting, to say the least. You're not even aware of it happening most of the time, and it could be a little confusing to some finding the right solution. But that is exactly why Surfshark VPN yearns to be that easy, one-for-all solution. With a click of a button, no matter if you're on Windows, Android, or shiny Apple products, Surfshark turns you into an anonymous and hard-to-track user, giving you more freedom on the internet, keeps you away from prying eyes, and of course prevents companies from doing stupid things like geo-blocking, where video and streaming services restrict your library simply because of where you live. Netflix here in America just lost The Office, but then I found out, oh wait, it's coming back to Netflix in the UK. What am I supposed to do here? Use the actual DVDs? It takes all day. Either way, Surfshark makes that a non-issue. Start up their service, choose your location, refresh the page, and bam, I'm back to watching The Office right here in America. Those that use the link in the description below and enter the special code Johnny will not only get 83% off their initial order, but the next 4 months are also completely free. Thanks to Surfshark VPN for the sponsor, and thank you for helping support this channel, as always. And now on with the show.
Are you ready for round 2?
Quick disclaimer before I begin today's video. I am recording this segment right here in the wee fucking hours in the morning, and my neighbors, I don't know what in God's name they're doing, but they got their music blasting and they're singing some karaoke. I don't know what the hell it is. I don't know what to say or do about that. I gotta make this video, so let's just continue on with it. Anyway, welcome back to round 2, where I do a second look on a game I already reviewed, either because of patch updates, DLC, whatever warrants a second visit. And yeah, I know you Dragon Quest fans are like, I demand justice! I understand, but 1, gotta meet those sponsor deadlines, and 2, better time management is something I promised I'd work on in 2021 and beyond. 3, I have some major updates happening in my life that require my full attention, which I will elaborate in a future video, and 4, a round 2 of Shovel Knight has been on my back burner for way too goddamn long. Good God, that video is already close to 6 years old, and it's less than 10 minutes long? I could have sworn it was longer than that. Oh, Gil. I wonder what life in the next dimension is like ever since my cat sent him there. That's right, the next dimension. Now you remember that when the police show up. To this day, Shovel Knight remains the poster boy for successful crowdfunded indie games, besides seeing 3 major expansions released for it in the span of 5 years, 4 if you include Showdown. This dude has been fucking everywhere, as a cheeky cameo, a playable character, an enemy, an assist trophy. If I were to make an indie game bingo card, obligatory Shovel Knight reference would be the fucking free space. Good for Yacht Club Games anyway, they made bank and then some, and this isn't even the end of it, because they got merchandise out the wazoo, including Amiibo, and there's a board game, and they also got this Shovel Knight Dig game in the pipeline. Looks great, seems fun, not sure on the release date. It was announced in 2019, and since then, not much else has been said, but I'm guessing the pandemic has something to do with that. If you ask me, there's still plenty to sink into with Shovel Knight and its fellow expansions, and let's start by revisiting the original, which now has the subtitle Shovel of Hope. Makes sense, Shovel Knight is more of a character at this point, it's a franchise, so the whole Star Wars treatment is likely because they want to make the identity of the original game more distinct. It's been a while since I jumped back into this game, but when this was new, I was into it. I own it on like 4 different consoles, on my Nintendo 3DS, my Nintendo Switch Beta, on Steam, and on my PS5 Beta. And for this revisit, I did go and play the PS4 version on my PlayStation 5, and I don't know the cause of this. Maybe it was because of that. I got some weird graphical hiccups in the Tower of Fate. The console, for some reason, didn't like the green stormy background, and I got a bunch of these black pixels flickering in and out constantly throughout every campaign to boot. I could still play the game just fine, but it was off-putting to look at, so here's hoping that's fixed at some point. Despite that, the colorful pixel graphics, the smooth as hell animations for characters and enemies, man oh man. I deeply respect Yacht Club Games for not using the retro style as an excuse to offer a limited presentation. It's purely an aesthetical choice. And it's not as if limited pixel animations and presentation are an immediate turnoff, it's the game that ultimately matters. But there's something to admire with Yacht Club going, yeah, we made it look old, but we're gonna be extra as fuck with Spectre Knight's cloak and scythe here. And to jump ahead, this praise holds true for all the expansions as well. We can get into the gameplay styles later, but off the bat just wanted to say they all look and sound just as good, if not better than the original game. Okay then, Shovel of Hope as it's now called, still a great time. Again, been a couple of years since I last played it, but jumping back into it was not a problem at all. The controls are excellent, the idea of me using a shovel to attack and bounce off enemies is still as endearing as it ever was, being rewarded frequently for exploration, and using all that delicious money I earned to purchase upgrades that can help me turn the tide during boss battles and those more arduous platforming challenges. Still, it sucks plenty of balls whenever I die and lose money, and then I lose even more money as I attempt to get back what I previously lost. I remember something Gil said in the original video where the levels can feel a little long in the tooth, something I didn't necessarily agree with him originally, but now I can kind of see what he meant. I love playing the game, but unlike before, a part of me did grow a little fatigued playing some stages, and I don't think it's just because I'm playing something I've already played before. Like I said, it's been a couple of years since I last played this, more than enough time to reset the palate, you could say. But I'm playing through some of these stages, I get to this part and I'm like, oh right, I still haven't done this section yet, or oh Jesus, I didn't miss this part with the floating bird statues or these assholes that can push you back with their giant fans. Ugh, it all adds up eventually. And assuming you have to brush up on your reflexes or don't have the proper tools at the moment, some of the bosses can be a little too chaotic to be fun. Plague Knight, I have plenty of healing items, but good lord, it could be so spastic. My strategy for some of these encounters is just attack, 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 drink my Jesus juice, attack, 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 attack. Not very sophisticated, but it gets me results. And you know what? I didn't think much of the Chaos Orbs when I first played the game, but doing a dedicated magic run for my revisit with extra ammo by my side thanks to the purple armor, this thing is a beast. Except against Kratos, who just shrugs that shit off like he's in PlayStation All-Stars, the prick. Shovel of Hope is still a great recommendation to this day, well worth its $15 price tag, assuming you buy it individually and not as a part of the Treasure Trove collection. Whatever you decide to do, you're still getting the next expansion, Plagueis Shadows, completely free, and I feel that's a proper enough segue. So as a part of their Kickstarter stretch goals, Yacht Club promised to make dedicated campaigns for some of the bosses. I think the ones they chose were based off of what backers voted for or something like that. Either way, first up was Plague Knight, and the story of his journey is not at all complicated. While the Enchantress is looking to rule the land with her Order of No Quarter, Plague Knight has some plans for his own, and by that I mean he wants to collect the essences of his colleagues to make a concoction that will grant him ultimate power. His plan with that ultimate power? Winning the heart of Mona, a character that was originally just a bored patron of the town bar that you played the speaker minigame with. In this story, she's revealed to be Plague Knight's partner in crime, more than happy to support Plague Knight's endeavors for the sake of research and because she truly admires Plague Knight as a person. The chemistry between these two is the best thing about this expansion. There's fun in Plague Knight having witty retorts to the other bosses and causing mayhem altogether, and it's amazing how he hasn't reduced his assistant Percy into a tub of glue given how things unfold, and what the fuck is he doing right here, a mating call? But Plague Knight's mission to become more confident in himself to win the heart of Mona is captivating, and sure, it's cliched, you know where things are going as they proceed, but it's all still heartwarming. Their little waltz at the end of the game is my favorite moment in the entire Shovel Knight collection. It's a beautiful setting, wonderfully animated, a great way to end the story for this adventure. I don't appreciate the game putting me on blast when I was watching Mona do her solo dance. Hey, come on, man, I'm just admiring the pixel animation. That was pretty funny though. The game itself, on the other hand, okay, so when Plagueis Shadows originally released in, 2015, right? I did immediately jump into it. It's more Shovel Knight goodness, I like the original game. I was down with the idea of controlling some bosses to see their side of the things and whatnot, and it was a free add-on. Plagueis Shadows comes with your purchase of the original Shovel Knight game. That's great, so I pick up the game, play about 2 stages, and then I put it down. Fuck Plague Knight's control scheme. Alright, it's his jumps I'm not a fan of. They're awkward. His initial jump is shorter than Shovel Knight's and has little to no momentum, but he also has a small double jump to correct himself a bit to somewhat make up for it. Your main method of making large jumps and getting a move in general, though, is charging your bomb burst. You hold the attack button down, and once you start glowing, you let the button go. You explode, and you're sent flying across the level. You can then do a double jump to keep the speed going, or to make the extra distance if your initial explosion didn't quite work. It is so unruly, so unorthodox, and so unlike what Shovel Knight did beforehand that it was an immediate turnoff. I didn't like it, so I stopped playing it. And I felt a little bummed out because I totally dug the great dialogue of all the townspeople, getting different perspectives from the boss's side of things, the idea of using bombs and other concoctions as a means of attack. Plague Knight is all about long-range combat, lobbing bombs left and right like a cute little mad bomber. The fact that I could use money I found in stages to buy different types of weapons and other kinds of bombs, some that had a larger blast radius, some that homed in on enemies, some that created Bomberman-type cross explosions, and the fact that I can choose how I could throw these bombs, either straight on the ground or lob them into the air, which was great for bosses like Propeller Knight, all of this was engaging enough to keep me going. The combat of Plague Knight is awesome. The control, meanwhile, is not. I toughed it out for this video, and it did get better once I got the float burst. With this, you slowly fall down after doing a burst jump, and it made things infinitely more manageable. I mean, that's what it's there for, consider me a satisfied customer, but I adamantly refuse to try anything else. The fire burst, the ice burst, all those other types of attack-based bursts I ignored because that would mean going back to the default burst jump, which I cannot stand, even in boss fights. I was more than comfortable with just launching myself straight up and throwing bombs until the cows came home. In that way, Plagueis Shadows was good, but overall, it felt like a weaker Shovel Knight. The progression through stages are the same, and the levels themselves aren't that radically different from before. It still looks great, still sounds great, but I wasn't too big on this, even if I did think it ended so well. Next on the list is Spectre of Torment, starring everyone's favorite edgelord Spectre Knight, a prequel to the events of the main game. Once upon a time, there was a thief, or treasure hunter, depends on who you ask, named Donovan, who, along with his partner Luan, ventured the lands and made off with riches whenever they could. Soon they hear of this magical amulet that supposedly grants great power, and not wasting any time, the two make their way to the Tower of Fate to claim it for themselves. For Donovan, it's the thrill of the hunt, but for Luan, it's to protect his family, that hyperactive boomerang kid from the original game. As the two close in on the amulet though, they unexpectedly cross paths with Shield Knight, who urges the two to stop what they're doing for their own sake. Though Luan is eager to back off, Donovan wants his precious and fights tooth and nail against Shield Knight to claim the amulet. Alas, things turn south very quickly. Luan is killed, Donovan is gravely injured, and this is where Shield Knight is possessed by the amulet and becomes the Enchantress. Spoiler warning for the main game, in case I caught you off guard. The newly formed Enchantress promises to bring Donovan back to life if he swears allegiance to her, and seeing no real choice in the matter, Donovan agrees and becomes the Spectre Knight we all know from the main game. With his new life, Spectre Knight is then tasked with recruiting other knights to form the Order of No Quarter so that the Enchantress can begin her conquest, and that's the basic gist of it. We don't really get much out of the other knights in terms of development. Well, no, actually Black Knight gets a few moments here and there. But learning of Spectre Knight's origins makes for an easily more tragic tale in the Shovel Knight universe. It is the darkest expansion of the set, witnessing the fall of Donovan and how he continuously reflects on his weakness when he was still alive. I don't feel too terrible about the whole thing, seeing as he did lose control due to his greed and indirectly caused his friend's death because of it, but in a way I do pity the man because he is clearly distraught about the entire thing. I made the Locke reference earlier, but now that I think about it, all the flashbacks with Donovan and Luan kind of remind me of Shadows flashbacks in Final Fantasy VI. Minus the whole shitting my pants because of this nightmare sequence. An overall grim setting, but there's still room for more humorous dialogue, which once again is on point and only causes some whiplash in tone. Although given the setting, things are obviously a little more grimdark. You're not visiting any towns or villages, but you still got plenty of other ghoulish NPCs that, sure, they work for the Enchantress, but seem like regular people when they're outside of their typical 9 to 5, you know? You got Red here in his search for his lost love, Gall in his failed attempts with his kiss of death, Missy, who is more than willing to sell you any permanent health and magic upgrades you missed in a level run, and she's so giddy about it too. You don't find the chest, you head back to the central hub, and you see her hopping up and down like, oh yeah, it's payday. Like Plagueis Shadows, the story hits familiar beats, but it's still a good time to venture through, and the character interactions as always are great. As is the game, Spectre of Torment is the best expansion for Shovel Knight, I feel. You got your scythe, you can slash up bad guys like nobody's business, you can home in from above and below to deal a direct attack, and you also use it to travel through obstacles and other fatal hazards. You can even run along the wall for a bit and then jump off to another wall to keep things moving. There's a great selection of power-ups that give Spectre Knight utility that I love to see in my action platformers. Throwable weapons, self-healing for when you're in a pinch, this amazing skill that lets you zip to the closest enemy for a strike that's great for an attack, but also lets you bypass any level design as you close in. For that godforsaken tower climb minigame, it was essential. Dear God, I hated how shot my nerves got when I was reaching the top of this thing. What's great is that after amassing enough red skulls to obtain these skills, you're given a short tutorial level that lets you get accustomed to how it works, so that you're just not blindly thrown into the thick of it outside. To be fair to Plague Knight, he also had great utility in case I didn't emphasize that outside of his bombs and awkward jumps. When used correctly, Plague Knight was a force to be reckoned with, but Spectre Knight has the better control scheme, and his gameplay is so fast-paced. It hits me in the right spots, the scythe jumps, the wall kicks, grinding on rails, doing Tony Hawk tricks when no one is looking like a total asshole, and the all-new level design with brand new musical remixes takes complete advantage of all these techniques. It's still a little on the short side. In fact, I think Spectre of Torment is the shortest of the expansions, if my playtime is anything to go by, but the amount of fun I have going through all these stages in this Mega Man fashion, where I can pick and choose which knight I want to fight next with the same satisfaction I get from regular Shovel Knight involving exploration, treasure hunting, and now I got this cool scythe, inject that shit directly into my veins. This is a great time. An easy recommendation. So I completely forgot Shovel Knight Showdown was even a thing, but this was something they also promised as a stretch goal, and is part of the treasure trove, so here we are. Shovel Knight Smash Brothers. Lots of playable characters to unlock, everyone having an individual story mode, giving everyone a purpose for being here. A playable Mono, which is an instant win in my book. I didn't spend a whole bunch of time on this, seeing as I didn't really have anyone to play with, but it was okay, it's passable. But I'm not terribly big on the whole needing to collect a certain number of gems to win the round. It's consistent to Shovel Knight's core design, but one I think makes for a clumsy mechanic in the Smash Brothers setting. I mean, who the fuck played coin mode? Also, I can appreciate the Smash Brothers approach, but it still sort of plays like Shovel Knight. The fighting mechanics weren't exactly tuned accordingly. I'm talking combos, the weight of the characters, all those intricacies feel off. But that also could be because the game puts me in a Smash Brothers mentality, but at the same time it isn't one-to-one Smash Brothers. A fun little distraction if you get bored of fully completing the other expansions. Speaking of, let's tackle the final one, the King of Cards starring King Knight. Nothing much to get into story-wise though. This card game called Joustus has swept the land. Everyone's getting in on this children's card game, not judging for the record. A Joustus tournament is beginning to unfold, with the person able to topple the 3 Joustus judges being declared King of Cards. The idea of being a king of anything is enough to entice King Knight, so he begins his journey to defeat the 3 judges and win the ultimate prize. That's really all there is to it. So I understand that King Knight was a popular choice. It's the entire reason he was given his own story. But I don't know, I feel like games centered on Polar Knight or Treasure Knight would have been more interesting lore-wise. I mean, you know exactly the kind of person King Knight is just from his boss encounters, and all the other expansions too. Pompous, shiny, overly decadent, qualities that make for an entertaining villain, and he is great in that role, make no mistake. But he's one that, in my eyes, doesn't make for the most interesting protagonist. In fact, most of my enjoyment story-wise from King of Cards comes from everyone except King Knight. It's always the same punchline with him, he's an asshole. A fucking asshole at that by the end of the game. Most of it is played for laughs. The comedy is cranked up tenfold in general. I love when you defeat Mr. Hat after you refuse to buy something from his store, and after agreeing to take him aboard your airship, he also just takes his entire fucking store with him. I also never tire of watching King Knight pretend he's flying this small airship, but very little of my enjoyment of King of Cards came from the titular character, and I find that a little strange. Although credit where credit is due, the fact that he's able to challenge the judges directly in battle and not in the card game because there's no rule stating he can't do that, that's genius. Favorite part of that whole setup. The game itself involves King Knight traveling the land like you do levels in Super Mario World. I mentioned Super Mario World specifically because, besides being the obvious reference visually, there are also alternate exits that lead to secret challenges, additional boss fights, and lots of money. Stages are also significantly shorter in King Knight's campaign, with some ending with no boss fights, period. It's a breath of fresh air conceptually, and what I'm grateful for as someone who had to play all these campaigns back to back for this video. Believe me, the fatigue was setting in pretty hard by the time I got to King of Cards. But is it too much to ask for a normal control scheme in these godforsaken things? So King Knight can jump like the rest of them, but his default attack is the shoulder tackle. Might seem familiar if you like the Wario Land series, it's basically the same thing. As a means of attack, it's fine, got no issues with that in terms of combat. And there are other attacks you can later unlock that are more traditional, like a healing hammer, rat bombs, and this dueling glove that got a laugh out of me because I immediately thought of Men in Tights. It's platforming where I feel King Knight's gameplay is unnecessarily obtuse. In order to scale walls or even the smallest ledges that are just a little too high to reach with a normal jump, you have to shoulder bash into the wall, where King Knight will then do this rebound twirl, which grants extra height, and that allows him to make it across safely. You get used to this, and chaining together twirls to strike enemies or to keep the pace going across bottomless pits and all that, it can be a gratifying gameplay mechanic. Throughout my whole adventure with this golden shit nugget though, I'm constantly saying to myself, man, this shit is dumb. Why did they go with this direction? And in those incredibly tight platforming challenges, I couldn't fathom how I would accomplish what was asked of me if I didn't have certain upgrades. The ice skating rails and the snow levels, god, the propeller sequences with these assholes and the giant fans, my poor precious wallet. I played most of my adventure with the armor that allowed you to dash straight up and down. Used correctly, it makes some levels completely trivial. There was also this bubble ability I got later that saved my ass so many times that I lost count. But for what it matters, chaining the bubble together with proper air dashes was invigorating. I got legitimate enjoyment trying to solve challenges in my own way, and I'm grateful King of Cards gave me that choice. If I'm being honest, I mean, besides the fact that I was getting a little tired of Shovel Knight by the time I got to King of Cards, I was ready to just stop playing altogether when I experienced Joustus. Yes, the card game the entire premise of the story is based around is an actual gameplay element in King of Cards. But thankfully it's completely optional. I thought it wasn't at first, and that's what made me nervous, not because I think Joustus is a bad game, no, I think the game itself is just fine. It's one of those easy to pick up, difficult to master sort of spiels. You know, it feels good to score a win, and it's a good way to earn some extra money on the side. But the idea of learning a completely different game in order to proceed with the main game was something I thought King of Cards was trying to do, but it ended up not being the case. Not a big fan when games try to do that, and Well, wait, if you want to 100% this expansion, I think mastering the card game is mandatory anyway, so good luck with that. To me, King of Cards is my least favorite of the expansions. I was juggling between Plagueis Shadows and King of Cards for a bit on which one I liked less, and in the end, King of Cards took that bronze trophy. It's perfectly playable, and there's still a lot to enjoy regarding the story, how it unfolds, and seeing King Knight get increasingly disgusted at the thought of the king banging his mom when he isn't looking. In the end, I managed to beat the game, got my little congratulatory message from the devs, and now I got this spiffy new title screen. That's great. I'm just not into King Knight's control scheme, and his method of level progression just doesn't jive well with me. However, I think I may be the minority on that, so don't get too put off by my words. I'm sure there's plenty you can enjoy here that I didn't. That can be the beauty of different experiences and viewpoints. The treasure trove in its entirety is $40. Considering the amount of varied content the package offers, including Shovel Knight Showdown and all those extra challenges I didn't even get into for this video, that's well worth the price tag. But if you want to err on the side of caution, Spectre of Torment and King of Cards are $10 separately, so you can either dip your feet in, or just fucking jump into the pool with reckless abandon. That choice is yours. And with that said, I'm heading back to Dragon Quest. Thank you all for watching, stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you decide to go outside, have yourselves a fantastic night, don't blast your goddamn karaoke music at 1 in the goddamn morning, and take care.